Hello everybody and welcome back to Insider's Guide. Today we're continuing our discussion of one of the most popular ski resorts in the Lake Tahoe region, Palisades, Tahoe. With Palisades, there's a lot to talk about, so this episode is split into 5 parts just to cover the Olympic Valley side. In this part, we'll cover the legendary terrain of KT-22. If you haven't already, go check out part A to get some context to a lot of the things I'm about to say. So with that, let's continue in Insider's Guide to Ski Resorts, Palisades, Tahoe. Let's begin today's conversation with the most iconic lift in North America, KT-22. You hear a lot of talk about KT-22. It's so famous it's nicknamed the Mothership, and I can safely say that it lives up to all of the hype and more. There is so much variety off this one chair alone. You could find an entire season's worth of distinct trails here. If you're an advanced or above skier, taking several runs in this pod across the various zones should be towards the top of your itinerary. When thinking about KT-22, the pod can essentially be divided into 2 distinct sections, the east and west faces. We'll start with the east face. Please note that KT-22 has a ridiculous amount of terrain. I simply will not be able to cover every single little chute here, but I will certainly talk about the highlights. This is the first part of the mountain where the book we mentioned in part A really comes in handy. I will certainly be referencing a handful of lines from it as we talk about the most extreme lines in the pod. Now, at the top of KT-22, you have the option of either going left or right. Going left will bring you to Red Dog Ridge, while going right will bring you to the Saddle. Note that everything up until Nose is considered part of the east face. Saddle itself is typically groomed, while Red Dog Ridge, which runs behind McConkey's here on the trail map, is not. Red Dog Ridge can actually develop some pretty sketchy coverage due to the sheer volume of people that travel on it. The ridge does get pretty flat, however, especially once you get to the Tom's Tumble area. Heidi's is a wide open run that isn't really worth accessing from KT-22. I think you're better off just hiking a bit from Red Dog if you really want to ski it. Heidi's Glades is a little more interesting, and there are some cool rock formations closer to Heidi's that can make for some pretty gnarly chutes. Tom's Tumble is an interesting area that is home to 2 very steep chutes. Make sure to scope your line from the top of Olympic Lady, as it's hard to see lines from the top of the zone. Tamara's, formerly known as East Face, is one of the best runs on this part of the mountain. The entrance can require a drop in, and the rest of the run is a very steep face that is often home to some of the best snow on KT. East Face Gully is the run out for all of this, and is nothing special in itself. For some slightly steeper lines, cut towards the Olympic Lady chair towards the bottom of Tamara's to access East Face Cliffs. Speaking of which, the Olympic Lady lift hardly ever runs, so you'll most likely have to take Easy Street back down to KT-22 if you're skiing any of the runs in this area. Towards the top of the Olympic Lady lift line is a cliff band home to several very extreme runs. The east and most prominent of these is known as Diagonal Chute, which is one of my personal favorite lines on this part of the mountain. After skiing one of the lines in this cliff band, you'll filter onto Waterfall Gully, a small ravine that runs directly under the Olympic Lady lift. There are a handful of fun cliffs in Waterfall Gully, but they are all optional. On the looker's right of the Olympic Lady chair, Woman's Downhill is a steep run that is occasionally groomed. Otherwise, it's a real leg-burning bump run. Towards the bottom, you can cut skiers left to access Downhill Cliffs, a series of really fun drops and chutes. Red Trail and Strawberry Fields are runs that'll take you back to Olympic Lady. Red Trail is more wide open, and Strawberry Fields is another gully akin to Waterfall Gully. At the very beginning of Red Dog Ridge, if you look skiers left, you might notice a rope that leads to an ultra-steep rock face. This rope accesses McConkey's, formerly known as Eagle's Nest. McConkey's is one of, if not the most extreme zone on the entire mountain. It's literally a sheer cliff that is only skiable in exceptionally good seasons. There are only a handful of lines down this cliff, all of which are stupid extreme. Guys, this is serious technical terrain, and I don't recommend it to almost everyone watching this video. The only reasonable line in this area for most people is known as Ambrosia Chute, which is a really fun and aesthetic shot in between the 2 rocks that make up McConkey's. You can actually see it on the trail map here if you look close. It's a super narrow, steep chute that's still pretty gnar, but I highly recommend it if you're confident in your jump turns. GS Bowl is the main run under the KT-22 and is one of the most popular runs in the pod. The steepest entrances are right next to the KT lift, but you can find some easier ones by skiing down Nose first and then dropping in. GS Cliffs is a small area akin to downhill cliffs and is a fun stop along the way before you reach the lower half of KT. The nose is essentially the ridge that divides the east and west face of KT-22. It starts off quite narrow but widens once you get further down. Honestly, my favorite part about Nose is all the chutes you can access off it. Arnie's and the unmarked Coleman's area a bit further down from it are both home to a plethora of lines ranging from tight chutes, straight lines, and massive cliffs right in view of the lift. Powderhorn is a wide open area right below Nose. If you pass through, it's an indicator that you're about to reach the most extreme part of the lower KT zone, the Fingers. The Fingers are a series of 9 lines that offer some of the craziest skiing on the entire mountain. From lookers left to right, they are named Icefall, Hatchet Line, Extreme Traverse, Angerbritsens, Middle Knuckle, Box Chute, Ring Finger, Main Air, and Left Side Variations. For reference, everything lookers left of the KT-22 lift line, although still very steep, is technically considered part of the Schimmelpfennigbowl, not the Fingers. Part of the allure of the Fingers is that they're right under the lift, so no matter what you do, you'll have an audience. Icefall is the first obvious chute that you see, and is named as such because there is often a frozen waterfall that runs through it. It, along with the left side variations, are the best places to start in the Fingers, as they're mostly just straight lines that don't require mandatory air. The most notable line of the left side variations is known as Banana Chute, and is a steep straight line through the trees and cliffs. Box Chute is an incredibly steep line right between the middle knuckle and ring finger. This is where the lines start becoming serious. Box features a rock literally known as the Paralyzer. Main Air is a 30 to 40 foot drop that is usually the first Fingers line to get skied on a deep powder day. Hatchet and Angerbritsens are 2 chutes that require a combination of straight lining and mandatory airs. Finally, the Middle Knuckle and Ring Finger are 2 absolutely insane Alaska level spines with mandatory 40 foot drops at the end. Think the handrail at Kirkwood on meth. For all of these lines, extensive studying of this zone from the base and chairlift is critical. There is a serious blind rollover at the top, which makes it very difficult to figure out where in the zone you are. The runout for all of the Fingers lines is Schimmelpfennigbowl, which can get quite bumped up and congested, so just be mindful of people below you. Alright, let's now move to the west face of KT-22. Back on Nose, if instead of dropping skiers right into GS Bowl you drop skiers left, you'll be on Mosley's, formerly called West Face. It is the premier mogul run at Palisades and is an absolute must-hit. If you continue down Nose further before dropping left, you can access the Nose Chutes, a series of 7 awesome lines. The 2 uppermost chutes have a bit more fall line, and as such I do prefer them, but I do also enjoy the lower 5. There's just so much variety back here and not a single bad line choice. Directly below the Nose Chutes are the 4 west face alternatives, which are a series of wide open mogul runs. Chute 75 is probably the most distinct run on the west face of KT-22. The entrance is usually corniced and it maintains a really tough pitch all the way to the bottom. Sometimes the main entrance into 75 will be closed, but you can still get in via Alt 75 here, which is just a bit further along Saddle. It's hard to tell on the trail map, but there's actually a massive rocky area in between Chute 75 and Rock Garden that's home to some of the most interesting terrain on KT-22. The easiest line here, Aw Chute, is my favorite trail on the west face of KT-22. Please don't take this terrain lightly. It's extremely technical and it's very easy to get cliffed out. I'd seriously recommend going here with someone who knows the area very well if it's your first time. Moving a bit further down, Rock Garden and Dead Tree are 2 entrances that filter into the same general area. The snow here is always a bit variable, so it can take longer to open than the remaining KT terrain. It is worth noting that Dead Tree is a bit steeper than Rock Garden. Just a bit beyond the Dead Tree entrance is a line known as Portal, which starts off as a very steep chute between cliffs. Past the entrance, you can go skiers left for a sizable cliff drop called Portal proper, or bail skiers right onto Dead Tree. Finally, Saddle itself, a groomer, snakes around all of this west face terrain that we've discussed and filters onto Mountain Run. Saddle Face is a slightly steeper and more direct alternative to the lower half of Saddle. All of the west face terrain will filter onto either Home Run or Mountain Run, both of which take you back to the KT lift. I prefer Home Run because it drops you in a better spot in relation to the KT lift maze. Finally, I want to briefly talk about the terrain served by She Shu since we've already touched on it in this video. She Shu is one of the 3 primary out-of-base lifts that take you directly to the upper mountain of the Palisades side, the other 2 being the Tram and Funatel. I'd say this is by far the most underutilized method of getting higher up, so if it's spinning, I'd definitely recommend taking it. It is a bit out of the way from the base area, but it's worth it. While She Shu isn't intended to serve any unique terrain of its own, however, there are a few trails that run directly under it, and, well, they're infamously some of the worst on the entire mountain. By far the biggest offender here is Mountain Run, an ultra-congested intermediate road that serves as the main route back to the base. Unfortunately, pretty much everyone coming from the upper mountain and the west face of KT will have to ski down Mountain Run at some point unless they download either the tram or the Funatelle. I do recommend that beginners and intermediates download, as the suffering is just not worth it. You do have a few alternative runs, Spring Bowl, Sunnyside, Olympic High, and Summer Road, but these aren't always open, especially the ones closer to the Broken Arrow terrain. As such, I'd really try to plan your day where you don't have to ride down the entirety of Mountain Run more than once. As we talked about previously, towards the bottom, you have the option of taking Mountain Run or Home Run. I definitely prefer the latter. Both runs get quite flat towards the end, so try to carry as much speed as you can. Well, that's about it for KT-22. Go check out all the remaining parts now, all about the rest of the mountain. As always, please leave any questions down below. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please consider subscribing to help support this stream. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.